This presentation is going to be about how the United States developed human rights for its people over time. The United States will prove to be a leader at some times and far behind at others. There will be many advances forward and a few steps backwards as well. The Declaration of Independence was revolutionary at the time of its creation in 1776. Not only was it a step towards freedom from Great Britain, but it also was a step towards equality between people. However, there have been a few issues that appear already with its creation. It states that all men are created equal, which already limits the rights of women in the political arena, and if you press further into the meaning behind the Declaration's use of the word man, you will find out that it truly only means wealthy white men in the early days. The Bill of Rights was another forward step for the United States. It granted rights to its people that had been key issues in the past, under other countries' rule like Britain. It provided freedom of religion, speech, and provided better protection and representation to its citizens of the United States. The Native American genocide was the result of Congress passing the Indian Removal Act in 1830. There were an estimated 4,000 deaths from the Trail of Tears, and even more lives will be ruined in the future because of this event. This can be hailed as one of the most tragic human rights issues in the United States history, only to be rivaled by the Japanese internment camps and slavery. The ending of slavery, although late compared to Europe, was a massive step forward in United States history. The freedom of slaves, or the 13th Amendment, also quickly led to the 14th and 15th Amendments, which granted citizenship and the right to vote to African Americans. This is one of the largest steps forward the United States would take in its human rights, but the Jim Crow laws would dampen the effect it had in the South almost to a point of negligence in the early days of the three amendments. The United States also signed the Hague Conventions, which helped protect POWs during World War II. The Sedition Act of 1920 was a huge step back for human rights. It was a result of the first Red Scare against socialism and people who did not support the United States entering the Great War, or as it is now called, World War I. It was a direct action against the First Amendment, and it led to the imprisonment of thousands. The United States was also a heavy supporter and leader for the creation of the League of Nations, but failed to join after its creation. The women's suffrage movement took a long time to pull through. Despite having 100 men and women sign the Seneca Falls Declaration in 1848, it wasn't until around 60 years after the blacks had gained the right to vote that it finally became a similar story for women in 1920. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal provided help to the elderly through the creation of the Social Security program, and it also took more steps towards protection of children with definite bans on child labor. The Japanese internment camps were another tragic moment in U.S. history. Over 120,000 Japanese Americans were relocated and tens of thousands were sent to camps because of the U.S. government. This mistreatment of the Japanese Americans was unnecessary, and although it was not as extreme as, it had some resemblance to that of concentration camps in Nazi Germany. The United Nations was also established in 1945, after World War II, as a way to provide more and better rights to everyone in the world. The U.S. was the leading country in the creation of the United Nations and still remains as one of its biggest contributors and supporters today. It's hard to believe that the segregation of blacks still existed after World War II, but it wasn't until 1954 that Brown won the case against the Board of Education, which finally led to an end of segregation of race in school. And it wasn't until 1964, after Martin Luther King Jr. had hundreds of speeches and peaceful demonstrations, that segregation by race would be entirely removed from the workplace. This is another sad tale of how the government took away the rights of many Americans and denied them a right to a fair trial over fear of terrorism. This was because of the most recent attack on the Twin Towers. Inmates at the detention camps were not even treated properly, as seen in the picture. The United States has been a mover and shaker in terms of human rights in the past, but also at times the U.S. made questionable decisions. Human rights will always be a work in progress, and people will always strive for everyone to have equality. There may be new struggles with groups such as the LGBT community, but as always, there will be change in a positive direction in the long term despite the current shirtwaist.